Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded, but we are here. The FPL season is upon us and it's time to unveil my Game Week 1 team for you guys. So if you're excited for the new FPL season, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what is your first draft. We are right here at the deadline. When you're watching this, your team should be locked in. So let me know what you've got going into Game Week 1. You can see my team right over there on what I've settled with. It is really close to the deadline now, and I've wanted to wait to get this video out. We did the podcast yesterday, so if you haven't sussed that out yet, the FPL show on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and FPL Dopada on YouTube, make sure that you suss out all those links there because we do have a growing community for fantasy players in particular. So if you do want to be a part of that, make sure you follow on Twitter, FPL Dopada on YouTube, and then the FPL show is what the podcast is called. So you can see my team right here as well. I've gone with a 3-4-3. I've been 3-5-2 for most of the off season, but I just needed to get a bit of Nicholas Jackson into my team. That was the kicker for me. It was the extra 6.5 midfielder or Nicholas Jackson. So I made it work to get Nick Jackson in. So on the podcast last night, I did have Stones and Chilwell as a 50-50. I've now gone to Chilwell and I've got rid of Eze for Jackson and I switched out Botman for Bayer. So they're the moves I made to make this team happen. What I wanted to talk through was sort of my justification around the team that we've got, because I think there's a world where we can do really, really well. So I'm excited to see what we can do. Sorry, I'm just playing around with a few little settings to make sure things sound good here. I've gone with Pickford in goal. That was mainly about not being sure on Onana. Again, Manchester United are going to be a solid team. We know that they're going to get the job done, but Pickford should get a lot more save opportunities versus the bonus points. When Everton do play well, especially at home, he'll typically, hopefully, get bonus points from saves, and he's just someone who can start in most games. As you can see, I've got Turner there on the bench as well. I just want to see what happens with Matt Turner in the long term, because Dean Henderson, it's a bit up in the air at the moment as to what's going to happen with Henderson. So I'm expecting to see hopefully him be a starting goalkeeper, and in some of those better matchups I might be able to flick Turner in if Forest look good, in particular at home. I know their away form was absolutely dreadful last year, but at home they weren't too bad. The back line is very, very template. I've seen everyone with Chilwell, Stupin and Gabriel. Again, I don't need to go into heaps of detail around those three. We know Chilwell is going to be very, very advanced in the Pochettino system for Chelsea. He's also on corners, which is massive. So the fact that he's going to be swinging in corners from both sides apparently is going to be massive for that assist potential, which is why I'm starting him in game week 1. Estupinan, get 3 weeks to look at him in 3 very good matchups. Again, I think he's almost fixture proof because Brighton are going to be very, very strong and he can return at any point. So I don't think he's going to hit the bench too much. Same with Gabriel. Gabriel for me has been a lock in since the game opened. He's just 5 million into the Arsenal defence with some very good fixtures to start off with. I'm very, very excited for Gabriel. We've got Udoji there as the 4.5 on the bench because he does rotate well with Estupinan. So if I see in the first couple game weeks that Udoji does look really, really solid, then I'll be a bit more okay with bringing him in for Estupinan. But again, it's a Spurs asset. It's a 4.5 million defender from Spurs. I think that's just too good to pass up with some good fixtures coming up after the first few. The midfield, I've gone with Salah. That's the big key. Not everyone's going with Salah. I believe his ownership is at 26%. It's gone up to 27%. It was 26% this afternoon. So some people at the deadline are starting to swing back to Salah. 9 contributions in preseason. If that's not enough to get Salah in your team and a really good game week 2 captain option, I don't know what's going to be good enough. I know you have to sacrifice a bit of your midfield to get it done, or a bit up front, depending on what system you're playing. But Salah at 12.5 million, I know it's a lot of money, but he's showing that he's going to return. 9 returns. I know we weren't playing the best teams in preseason, but you know, he's just absolutely on fire. You would absolutely hate yourself if you didn't have him and he banged against Chelsea going into that Bournemouth game. As a Liverpool supporter, I just need to have him in because I couldn't do it. I had this issue last year where I was moving premiums around and taking hits. I really don't want to do that this year. So Mo Salah is locked in my team. Saka and Rashford the same. Very, very nailed. Very safe picks. Rashford through the middle until Højlund's ready to go. very much a short-term pick for me. I'll be very much looking at downgrading Rashford to potentially a Maddison so I can move João Pedro at some point up. But that's the risk I'm taking at the moment with Marcus Rashford. Saka, don't need to go into too much detail with him. Everyone's got him locked in on that right wing for Arsenal and on penalties. This 6.5 mid spot for me has been an absolute merry-go-round of options. I've gone from Mbeumo to Eze to Matoma to March to Diaby to Harvey Barnes, then to Matoma and one of those, and then Mbeumo and Matoma, and then Mbeumo and Eze I'll set on for a while. I've now landed on Matoma, and I'm staying on Matoma, and the reason I'm staying with Matoma is for the first 3 weeks. Their fixtures are too good for Brighton. They've got Luton at home to start off with, then Wolves and West Ham. The reason I'm doing Matoma is there's no rotation risk through the first 3 weeks. I'd be very, very surprised if De Zerbi does rotate Matoma through the first 3 weeks. That gives me 3 weeks to look at Mbeumo as a Harvey Barnes, potentially a Sterling and a Mudryk if I can make the 0.5 million up to the 7 mil, or Richarlison. Then I can make moves happen come game week 3 or 4. So that's my plan at the moment with Matoma, is he's not going to be in there long term because the fixtures turn. If I end up getting stuck with Matoma, it's not the end of the world because he is a very good player. But the long-term play is to pivot off of him when I get a bit more clarity around who I want in that 6.5 million spot. Haaland, captain game week 1. We know he's going to be very, very strong. Don't need to talk about that. João Pedro is becoming more and more favourable to teams. He's in 23% of teams now. He was 15% yesterday. So he's absolutely climbing up the ownership. I'm very, very excited to see what we get out of João Pedro. Again, it doesn't have to be a long-term option for me. He could also get downgraded, and then you go into a 3-5-2 again, and you upgrade Anderson to a 6.5 million midfielder. So there's ways around this team for me, but I'm really keen to see what João Pedro does for me in the first 3 weeks. If this team has to turn into a 4-4-2, I'm also not against that because Udogie hopefully will be a strong enough 4.5 million defender asset that I can pivot him to start some weeks if João Pedro doesn't play, or there's rotation risk and all of that there for João Pedro. So I'm more than okay with that to start the season with. Again, he's on penalties, very, very locked in. Playing in that number 10 role, we're probably looking a bit more creative returns for him. But again, I'm very, very happy going into the season with João Pedro. And the last minute inclusion to the team, Nicholas Jackson. Dom and I had been speaking a lot about Nicholas Jackson in the off-season or in the preseason. From what I've seen, he looks a lethal finisher. Everyone is talking about Nkunku and the impact that's going to have on the space being created for him. When you've got guys like Mudryk and Enzo Fernandez and Sterling and even Candy Chukwuemeka, I think there's going to be enough creativity in the Chelsea team to create opportunities, and Reece James and Ben Chilwell. I think there's going to be enough avenues to create opportunities for Nicholas Jackson. And what we've seen from him is he's a good finisher. We said the same stuff about Darwin Núñez last year. I think Jackson, though, has a little bit more higher pedigree of data coming from La Liga. So I'm very excited to see what we get out of Nicholas Jackson. Now, he was someone I was already targeting for game week 3. I've just thought, stuff it, we're just going to go straight ahead and get him in and save the transfer, because if I was going to plan the transfer for game week 3, then I might as well start with him. So that's where I'm at with my team. I'm very settled on this team right now. I haven't been settled on a team for a very, very long time. This will be the team that goes into my deadline today. So I'm very, very excited to see how we go. I will be doing a weekly video here on the channel as well for you guys. So if you do want to see my journey this year, we had a very up and down journey if you followed the podcast for the first half of last year. Hopefully we can have a bit better of a return this year when it comes to content creation. But as I said before, if you haven't already, make sure you get in the links in the description. Make sure you join the leagues as well. There's going to be codes there. There's going to be the link to the Discord, which has all that information in the channel, the FPL section there, plus the links to the podcast. So if you do want the longer form content, that will be there as well. Best of luck for your game week 1 sides, and I'll see you guys very soon for another video.